The great meeting hall of the Galactic Council buzzed with hundreds of different voices. Alien delegates from across the galaxy filled the massive chamber, their various forms creating a rainbow of colors and shapes. At the center podium, Ambassador Hyunwoo stood tall, his blue skin shimmering under the bright lights. "Fellow counselors," Hyunwoo began, his voice carrying across the hall, "we must discuss the human problem. It has been 50 years since they vanished, and we still do not know why." A ripple of mixed reactions swept through the crowd. Some delegates leaned forward with interest, while others made dismissive gestures with their various appendages. Dr. Sumin, a small reptilian creature with bright green scales, activated her data pad. The holographic display showed empty planets and abandoned space stations. "I have spent the last decade studying human settlements," she said. "What I found troubles me greatly." The images changed, showing perfectly clean facilities with no signs of violence or panic. Tools were put away neatly. Computers were wiped clean. Even the trash had been removed. "They did not flee in terror," Sumin continued. "They planned this for years. Every human colony we have found shows the same pattern. They took everything valuable and left nothing behind except empty buildings." Council Chairman Baksu, a massive creature with 6 arms and golden fur, waved dismissively. "Good riddance to them," he rumbled. "Humans were too emotional, too aggressive. They asked for full council membership, but we voted against them. The vote was 847 to 3. They could not accept our wise decision." Many delegates nodded in agreement. Humans had been strange creatures, always asking questions and wanting to change things. They never seemed to understand their proper place in the galactic order. But not everyone agreed with the chairman. On the edge of the galaxy, Salvage Captain Minho was discovering something that would change everything. His small crew worked on their ship, searching for valuable scrap metal in the outer systems. "Captain," called his engineer, a young woman named Sun Hee. "I am picking up strange readings on long-range sensors." Minho floated over to look at the display. His ship operated in zero gravity, and his crew had learned to move gracefully through the air. "What kind of readings?" "Ships," Sun Hee replied, pointing at the screen. "Large ones moving in perfect formation. The signatures match human designs, but they are heading toward empty space beyond the galaxy." Minho felt a chill run through his body. "How many ships?" "At least 1,000, maybe more. They are moving at incredible speed toward the dark zone." This dark zone was the empty space between galaxies. No one went there because there was nothing to find except cold emptiness and deadly radiation. "Set course to follow them," Minho ordered. "Captain, that is very dangerous," warned his pilot Dong-hyun. "Our ship is not built for deep space travel. Just get us close enough to see where they are going." The salvage ship changed course and headed toward the detected fleet. For 3 days they traveled through increasingly empty space. The normal background radiation of the galaxy faded behind them, replaced by the cold silence of the void. On the 3rd day, Sun Hee gasped at her station. "Captain, they are gone." "Gone? What do you mean gone?" "The ships just vanished. Not into hyperspace. They just disappeared completely. Our sensors show nothing." Minho stared at the empty space ahead of them. 1,000 human ships had been there moments before, and now there was nothing. It was as if they had never existed at all. Back on the council world, Counselor Ji-won was having her own strange experience. She sat in her private office reviewing trade reports when every communication device in the room activated at once. Her computer screen flickered to life. Her personal communicator buzzed. Even the old emergency radio in the corner began broadcasting. All of them carried the same message. The voice was clearly human, speaking in the common galactic language. It was calm and measured, without anger or emotion. "Greetings, Galactic Council. This message is being broadcast on all frequencies across known space. We want you to understand our position clearly." Ji-won leaned forward, her heart beating faster. No one had heard from humans in 50 years. "We came to the galaxy offering partnership. We shared our knowledge freely and asked only for acceptance as equals. You chose to see us as inferior beings who needed to be controlled and managed." The voice paused for a moment before continuing. "We offered our hands in friendship. You responded with suspicion and rejection. We tried to contribute to galactic civilization. You told us we were too primitive to understand the greater truths." G1 felt a strange sensation in her stomach. She remembered the debates about human membership. Most counselors had dismissed humans as emotional creatures who could not think logically. "The galaxy is vast," the voice continued. "It is big, enough for all of us to live and grow together. It is also big enough for us to live completely apart from each other." The transmission grew stronger, as if the source was moving closer to council space. "You have made your choice. We respect that choice. Now we have made ours. We leave you to build the galaxy you desire. We wish you success in your future endeavors." The message began to fade, but the final words came through clearly. "Remember this. We did not leave in anger. We left in sadness. The greatest tragedy is not that we could not stay together, but that you never understood what we could have built as friends." The transmission ended, leaving G1 alone in her office with only the sound of her own breathing. Outside her window, the great city of the council world continued its normal activities. Millions of beings went about their daily lives unaware that something fundamental had just changed. In the weeks that followed, reports came in from across the galaxy. Human settlements on thousands of worlds had been abandoned overnight. Human ships had departed from every port simultaneously. Even humans living in mixed communities had quietly packed their belongings and left. It was the most organized evacuation in galactic history, and no one had seen it coming. Dr. Sumin compiled the final report for the Council. "In conclusion," she wrote, "humanity has left our space completely. They took their people, their technology, and their knowledge with them. We do not know where they have gone or if they plan to return." She paused before adding the final line. "Perhaps, more importantly, we are beginning to realize how much we depended on them and how little we understood about what they were truly capable of." 2 years had passed since the human message echoed across the galaxy. Most people had forgotten about it and returned to their normal lives. But in the mining operations of the hegemony of Zar, Director Tae-hyun was facing problems he could not solve. "Another explosion in Sector 7, reported his assistant, holding a datapad with shaking hands. "That makes 12 major accidents this month." Tae-hyun rubbed his tired eyes with his forearms. The hegemony had built their wealth on mining operations across 50 star systems. Their massive machines dug deep into planets, extracting precious metals and rare elements that powered galactic civilization. But now everything was breaking down. "What did the engineers say?" Tae-hyun asked. "They do not understand what is happening. The machines worked perfectly for years, and now they fail, every few days." Tae-hyun walked to the window of his office and looked out at the mining complex. Huge machines that had once moved mountains now sat silent and broken. Repair crews worked frantically, but every fix seemed to create 2 new problems. Dr. Young-soo entered the office carrying a thick report. He was the hegemony's best technology expert, a brilliant scientist who had studied alien machines for decades. "Director, I have finished my analysis," Young-soo said. "The news is worse than we thought." "Tell me," Tae-hyun replied, though he dreaded the answer. "Every major system in our mining operation contains components designed by humans. We thought we had improved their designs, made them better and more efficient. But we were wrong." Young-soo activated his holographic display, showing the internal structure of a mining drill. "Look at this power coupling. We based our design on human blueprints, but we changed the materials to make it cheaper to build." The image zoomed in on a small crystal component. "We thought this was just a simple power regulator, but it is much more complex. The humans designed it to work for exactly 1,847 days, then gradually degrade." Tae-hyun felt his blood grow cold. "You mean they planned for their machines to break?" "Not break, require maintenance. Human engineers would visit our facilities every few years to perform routine updates on their components. We thought they were just making sure we were happy with their products. The truth hit Tae-hyun like a physical blow. They were resetting the degradation timers. Exactly. Without those updates, every human-designed component in our operation will fail within the next year. While the hegemony struggled with failing machines, Ambassador Yoonji was discovering an even bigger problem. She sat in the diplomatic quarter of the Council world, surrounded by reports from trade negotiations across the galaxy. The Altarian Defense Pact is dissolving, her aide reported. The Kalari Republic refuses to renew their agricultural agreements. The Valtarian Empire has closed their borders to 3 neighboring species. Yoonji shook her head in confusion. These agreements had kept peace in the galaxy for centuries. Why are they falling apart now? No one can agree on the terms anymore. Every negotiation turns into an argument. Species that used to work together now refuse to speak to each other. The aide activated a recording of the latest peace talks. Yoonji watched as representatives from different species shouted at each other across the negotiation table. What should have been a simple trade discussion had become a heated argument about ancient territorial disputes. Where are the human mediators? Yoonji asked, then immediately realized how stupid her question was. For centuries, humans had served as neutral mediators in disputes between alien species. Their ability to understand different cultures and find common ground had made them valuable diplomats. Most aliens had assumed this was because humans were too simple-minded to take sides in complex political matters. Now, without human mediators, old grudges were surfacing everywhere. Species that had lived in peace for generations were remembering why they had hated each other in the first place. On the agricultural world of Keller Prime, botanist Jae-sung was facing his own crisis. He stood in the middle of what had once been the most productive farmland in the galaxy. Now the crops were dying, and he did not know why. The soil tests show normal mineral content, his assistant reported. Water levels are perfect. Temperature and humidity are within ideal ranges. Jae-sung knelt down and picked up a handful of earth. It looked normal, but something was wrong. The plants that grew in the soil had fed billions of people across dozens of worlds. Now they were withering and dying. Run a biological analysis on the soil, he ordered. Check for bacterial content. 3 days later, the results confirmed his worst fears. The symbiotic bacteria are dying, his assistant reported. The ones that help the crops absorb nutrients from the soil. Jae-sung studied the data carefully. These bacteria were introduced by human agricultural specialists 50 years ago. They said the bacteria would improve crop yields. And they did. Our harvest increased by 300% after we started using human agricultural techniques. But look at this. Jae-sung pointed to a chart showing bacterial populations over time. The bacteria need specific nutrients to survive. Nutrients that were provided by other organisms that humans also introduced to our ecosystem. The truth became clear as they analyzed more data. Humans had created a complex web of biological relationships: plants, bacteria, insects, and soil. Organisms all depended on each other in ways that no one had understood. The humans knew, Jae-sung whispered. They designed this system to need their management. Without human agricultural experts to maintain the balance, the whole ecosystem will collapse. Similar problems were appearing everywhere. On Council Central, the quantum communication network that connected the galaxy began experiencing strange delays and errors. Messages that should have taken minutes to cross the galaxy were taking days or disappearing entirely. Counselor Sung Min studied the technical reports with growing alarm. The network was built using human theoretical frameworks, the chief engineer reported. We thought we understood the principles, but our version keeps developing errors. Can we fix it? We are trying, but every time we repair one problem, 3 new ones appear. The human equations we based our design on seem to be incomplete. Sung Min realized with horror that humans had given them just enough knowledge to build the system, but not enough to maintain it properly. The simple human theories had hidden complexities that no other species had recognized. Across the galaxy, the pattern was the same. Systems that had worked perfectly for decades were breaking down. Technologies that had seemed straightforward were revealing hidden dependencies on human knowledge and maintenance. The worst part was that most species still did not understand what was happening. They blamed equipment failures on bad luck or poor manufacturing. They thought the breakdown in diplomacy was just a temporary problem that would fix itself. But a few individuals were beginning to see the truth. Humans had not been the primitive, emotional creatures that the galaxy had dismissed. They had been the invisible foundation that held galactic civilization together. Dr. Young-Soo finished his final report on the mining failures. His conclusion was simple but terrifying. We thought we were using human technology. In reality, human technology was using us. They created systems so complex that only they could maintain them, then convinced us that we were the smart ones, for improving their designs. He paused before adding the final sentence. We are beginning to understand that humans did not need us at all, but we needed them more than we ever realized. The first cracks in galactic civilization had appeared, and they were spreading faster than anyone could repair them. 10 years after humanity's departure, the galaxy was falling apart. What had started as small problems with mining equipment and trade agreements had grown into a crisis that touched every world and every species. General Do-Yan stood on the bridge of her flagship, studying reports from across Alterian space. As commander of the Defense Force, she was responsible for protecting 50 star systems and 3 billion lives. But her enemies were not following any rules of war she understood. Another attack on the border colony of Threshold 7, her aide reported. Same pattern as the others. The attackers appeared without warning, disabled all defenses, and vanished before our reinforcements arrived. Do-Yan frowned at the tactical display. Red markers showed the locations of 23 similar attacks over the past month. What did they take? That is the strange part, General. They did not take anything. They just destroyed specific systems, shield generators, communication arrays, weapon platforms, then left. The attacks made no sense. Unknown ships would appear near a colony or space station, moving with impossible precision. Their weapons would target exactly the right systems to cripple defenses without causing major casualties. Then they would disappear, leaving behind confused survivors and detailed recordings of technologies that no one recognized. Show me the sensor logs from Threshold 7, Do-Yan ordered. The holographic display showed the attack from beginning to end. 3 sleek ships had emerged from empty space, not from hyperspace, but as if they had been invisible, and suddenly chose to be seen. Their weapons fired with perfect accuracy, hitting critical systems while avoiding areas where people lived and worked. Computer, analyze the attacker's weapon signatures, Do-Yan commanded. Unable to match weapon signatures to any known technology, the ship's computer replied. Energy patterns do not correspond to any recorded alien designs. Do-Yan studied the recording more carefully. Something about the attack pattern looked familiar, but she could not place it. The attackers seemed to know exactly where every important system was located, as if they had detailed blueprints of the colony's defenses. Meanwhile, on the research station of Centauri 9, Dr. Haewon was making a discovery that would change everything. She had spent years studying old human databases, trying to understand how they had integrated so completely into galactic society. Look at this, she said to her research assistant, pointing at her computer screen. I found something in the human cultural archives that they left behind. The screen showed what appeared to be a simple scientific survey, the kind that academics often conducted to study other species. But as Haewon examined it more closely, she realized it was much more than that. This is not just a cultural study, she whispered. It is a complete intelligence profile of every major species in the galaxy. The human database contained detailed information about the psychology, biology, technology, and military capabilities of over 1,200 different alien races. It included personality profiles of individual leaders, economic analyses of entire civilizations, and strategic assessments of military strengths and weaknesses. How did they gather all this information? Her assistant asked. By being helpful, Haewon replied, her voice filled with growing understanding. Every time a human scientist collaborated on a research project, They learned about our biology. Every time a human diplomat negotiated a trade agreement, they studied our psychology. Every time a human engineer fixed our machines, they analyzed our technology. The scope of the human intelligence operation was breathtaking. For centuries, they had presented themselves as curious, friendly creatures who just wanted to learn about the galaxy. In reality, they had been conducting the most comprehensive study of alien civilizations in galactic history. They knew everything about us, Haywan said quietly. Our weaknesses, our fears, our dependencies, and we knew almost nothing about them. The revelation explained many things that had puzzled researchers for years. Humans had always seemed to know exactly what to say in diplomatic negotiations. They had always offered technological solutions that seemed perfectly tailored to specific alien needs. They had always appeared in the right place at the right time to prevent conflicts or solve problems. The galaxy had dismissed this as human luck or intuition. Now it was clear that humans had been operating with complete knowledge of everyone around them, while keeping their own capabilities carefully hidden. In the Valtarian Empire, engineer Kyung-Soo was discovering just how thorough human preparation had been. His job was to maintain the Empire's vast fleet of warships, the most powerful military force in the galaxy. But for the past year, his job had become impossible. The quantum crystals in our main weapons are degrading, he reported to Admiral Wu Jin. Every ship in the fleet is experiencing power failures. The quantum crystals were the heart of Valtarian military technology. They focused and amplified energy to create the devastating weapons that had made the Empire the dominant military power in known space. How is this possible? Admiral Wu Jin demanded. These crystals are manufactured using our most advanced technology. They should last for centuries. Kyung-Soo activated his analysis display, showing the molecular structure of a failing crystal. The problem is not with our manufacturing, Admiral. The problem is with the raw materials. What do you mean? The rare elements we use to grow these crystals come from human mining operations. We always assumed that human refining techniques were primitive compared to ours. But look at this analysis. The display showed the atomic structure of the rare elements in incredible detail. The humans modified these materials at the molecular level, changes so small that our sensors could not detect them. The modifications are designed to cause gradual degradation in the crystal matrix over time. Admiral Wu Jin stared at the data in disbelief. They sabotaged our entire military? Not sabotaged, controlled. As long as human engineers provided regular maintenance and fresh materials, our weapons worked perfectly. But without that support, our entire fleet is becoming useless. Similar problems were appearing everywhere. On the Council world, Counselor, Wu Jin received reports of infrastructure failures from across civilized space. Power grids were shutting down. Atmospheric processors were failing. Water purification systems were grinding to a halt. Every critical system had some dependency on human knowledge, human components, or human maintenance that was no longer available. The failures were not random. They followed patterns that suggested careful planning and precise timing. It is as if they designed our entire civilization to need them, Wu Jin said to his aide. And now that they are gone, everything is falling apart. The most disturbing reports came from the outer colonies, where entire planets were going dark. Not from enemy attacks, but from the simple failure of life support systems that had worked without problems for decades. On the mining world of Kepler Station, the atmosphere recycling system shut down during the night shift. By morning, 3,000 workers had died of oxygen poisoning. The system had been based on human designs, but the aliens who operated it had never understood how it actually worked. On the agricultural world of New Harvest, the weather control satellites stopped responding to commands. Without artificial climate management, natural weather patterns returned for the first time in centuries. Massive storms destroyed crops across 3 continents, leading to famine that would affect millions of people. The pattern was the same everywhere. Humans had given other species enough knowledge to operate their technology, but not enough to truly understand or maintain it. When problems arose, everyone had assumed that human engineers would be available to fix them. The crisis reached its peak when a salvage crew found a drifting human colony ship near the edge of Council space. The ship was old and damaged, apparently abandoned years earlier, but its data core was still intact. Captain Insiok's log provided the first direct insight into human thinking during their departure. His final entries were calm and measured, showing no anger or desire for revenge. "We offered to teach them everything," one entry read. "We wanted to share our knowledge freely and build something wonderful together, but they only wanted to take what they could use immediately. They never wanted to understand the deeper principles or work as true partners." Another entry was even more revealing. "They call us primitive and emotional, but they do not see their own limitations. They think in terms of dominance and submission, control and dependence. They cannot imagine a relationship based on mutual respect and shared knowledge." The final entry was the most chilling. "We tried to warn them that their civilizations were becoming too dependent on systems they did not understand, but they dismissed our concerns as human anxiety. Now they will learn what happens when the foundation of their world disappears." Dr. Haywan read the colony ship logs with growing horror. She realized that humans had not planned galactic civilization's collapse out of spite or revenge. They had simply removed their support from systems that should never have needed it. In the first place, "They built us a house of cards," she whispered to her assistant. And then they were the only ones who knew where all the cards were placed. The galaxy's greatest civilizations were discovering that their greatest achievement. 15 years had passed since humanity left the galaxy, and the collapse was nearly complete. Billions had died not from war or disease, but from the simple failure of systems they had trusted for centuries. The Great Galactic Council, once representing 1,200 species across 50,000 worlds, had shattered into dozens of desperate factions fighting over the remains of their civilization. Admiral So Young commanded the last major expedition to find humanity. Her fleet of 12 ships represented the combined resources of 7 different species, united only by their shared desperation. They had spent 3 years searching the dark spaces beyond the galaxy, following the faint traces that salvage Captain Min Ho had detected decades earlier. "Admiral, we are detecting gravitational anomalies ahead," reported her navigator, Lieutenant Jin Woo. "The patterns do not match any natural phenomenon." So Young studied the sensor readings on her command display. After months of traveling through empty space, any unusual reading was worth investigating. Set course for the anomaly, all ships maintain formation. But as her fleet moved closer to the source of the strange readings, their navigation systems began to malfunction. The stars around them seemed to shift position, making it impossible to plot an accurate course. "Admiral, our computers cannot determine our position," Jin Woo reported with growing concern. "The star patterns do not match any of our charts." "That is impossible," So Young replied. "We have detailed maps of this entire region." "The maps were made using human astronomical data," her science officer reminded her. "What if the humans marked certain areas as dangerous to keep other species away?" So Young felt a chill run through her body. For centuries, human star charts had been considered the most accurate in the galaxy. Human explorers had mapped thousands of star systems and marked safe navigation routes through dangerous regions of space. But what if those dangerous regions had never been dangerous at all? What if humans had simply wanted to keep certain areas of space for themselves? "All ships reverse course immediately," So Young ordered. "We are heading back to Council space." But it was too late. Her fleet was lost in a region of space that existed on no alien star charts. They had fuel for perhaps 6 months, not nearly enough to find their way home without accurate navigation data. Back in the civilized galaxy, Dr. Sung Ho was making discoveries that would have horrified Admiral So Young if she had been alive to hear them. He worked in the ruins of a human research facility on the abandoned world of New Geneva, one of humanity's former colony worlds. The facility had been stripped clean before the humans left, but Dr. Sung Ho had found hidden data storage units built into the walls and floor. The information they contained changed everything he thought he knew about human capabilities. "This cannot be correct," he muttered to his research team as they studied the recovered data. According to these files, human technology was centuries ahead of anything else in the galaxy. The hidden archives contained blueprints for machines that operated on principles that other species could barely understand. Humans had developed faster-than-light travel methods that made standard hyperspace look primitive. They had created artificial intelligence systems that could predict the behavior of entire civilizations. They had mastered energy manipulation, techniques that could reshape matter at the atomic level. Why did they never use this technology openly? Asked Dr. Shung-ho's assistant, a young scientist named He-jin. Because they were trying to help us develop at our own pace, Shung-ho replied, reading through more of the files. Look at this memo from their research council. The document was dated 50 years earlier, during the height of human integration with galactic society. It outlined a careful plan to share advanced technology with other species gradually, allowing them time to understand and safely implement each new discovery. The Council rejected our proposal for technology sharing programs, the memo stated. They insist that they can reverse engineer our designs and improve upon them without our assistance. We will continue to provide simplified versions of our technology, but we must be prepared for the possibility that they will never accept us as equals. Dr. Shung-ho found hundreds of similar documents, all showing the same pattern. Humans had offered to teach other species their advanced technologies, but the alien governments had preferred to steal what they could and dismiss human knowledge as primitive. They were protecting us from ourselves, Shung-ho whispered. They knew that if we had access to their real technology without understanding it, we would have destroyed ourselves long ago. On the dying world of Centauri Prime, archaeologist Na Young was uncovering humanity's final message to the galaxy. But this message was not hidden in any vault or database. It had been written into the quantum structure of space itself, visible only when galactic civilization reached the breaking point. Na Young had been studying unusual quantum fluctuations that appeared whenever multiple star systems experienced infrastructure failures at the same time. At first, she had thought the fluctuations were natural phenomena caused by the collapse of galactic communication networks, but as she analyzed the patterns more carefully, she realized they formed a complex code, a message that could only be read by someone with access to quantum sensors from multiple failing star systems simultaneously. It is a message from humanity, she reported to the Emergency Council, the desperate organization that had replaced the old Galactic Council. They wrote it into the fabric of space itself, designed to become visible only when our civilization collapsed. The message was long and detailed, explaining the true history of human involvement in galactic society. It revealed that humans had arrived in the galaxy thousands of years earlier, not hundreds, as everyone believed. They had watched dozens of younger species develop and destroy themselves through war, environmental collapse, or technological disasters. We learned that young civilizations need time to mature, the quantum message stated. They need guidance, not dominance. They need teachers, not rulers. We tried to be the teachers you needed, but you wanted us to be the servants you could exploit. The message went on to explain human psychology and capabilities in detail. Humans had evolved on a planet where cooperation was necessary for survival, developing an instinctive understanding of complex systems and interdependencies. This made them natural diplomats, negotiators, and system designers. What you call human emotion is actually sophisticated empathy processing. The message continued. We developed biological systems that allow us to understand and predict the behavior of other species. This ability made us valuable mediators and advisors, but you mistook our empathy for weakness. The quantum message revealed that humans had tried repeatedly to warn the galaxy about its growing dependence on systems that only they understood, but their warnings had been dismissed as human anxiety or attempts to make themselves seem more important. We foresaw this collapse, the message stated clearly. We tried to teach you how to maintain the systems we built together, but you only wanted the benefits, not the responsibilities. You wanted to be customers, not partners. Counselor Dongmin read the decoded message with tears in his eyes. He had been one of the few voices who had argued for human inclusion in the Galactic Council decades earlier. Now he understood how catastrophically wrong the majority had been. They were not trying to control us, he said to his aide. They were trying to save us from ourselves. The quantum message contained detailed instructions for rebuilding galactic civilization, but with a sobering warning. The instructions would only work if the surviving species committed to cooperation and mutual respect. Any attempt to use the knowledge for domination or exploitation would result in the same collapse happening again. "We have not abandoned you," the final section of the message read. "We have simply stopped enabling your self-destructive behavior. When you are ready to learn rather than conquer, to build together rather than tear apart, to respect differences rather than eliminate them, we will return." The message included coordinates for a communications beacon, hidden in the space between galaxies, but accessing it would require technology from at least 50 different species working together, making it impossible for any single faction to contact humanity alone. Dr. Shung Ho finished compiling his research into humanity's true capabilities. His final report painted a picture of a species so advanced that they could have conquered the galaxy easily if they had chosen to. Instead, they had spent centuries trying to guide younger species toward peaceful coexistence and sustainable development. "Humans did not leave because they were weak," he wrote in his conclusion. "They left because they were strong enough to walk away from a situation that was harming both them and us. They chose exile over domination, hoping that we would learn from the consequences of our actions." The report spread quickly through what remained of galactic civilization. For the first time, surviving species began to understand what they had lost. Humans had not been primitive creatures lucky enough to stumble onto useful technologies. They had been the most advanced civilization in the galaxy, choosing to hide their capabilities in order to help others develop naturally. 50 years after humanity disappeared from known space, the galaxy had learned to survive at a much lower level of civilization. The great cities that once housed billions now sheltered thousands. The vast trade networks that connected star systems had shrunk to simple exchanges between neighboring worlds. But something important had changed in the survivors. The arrogance that once defined galactic civilization had been replaced by hard-earned wisdom. Dr. Min Jung stood before a class of young students in the rebuilt university on New Keller. Her hair was white with age, but her eyes still burned with the passion for knowledge that had driven her through the dark years of collapse and rebuilding. "Today we will discuss the human era," she announced to her mixed class of alien students. "Some of your parents lived through it. Others were born in the time after. But all of you have inherited the consequences of the choices made during that period." A young Valtarian raised her hand. "Teacher, were humans really as advanced as the old records claim? Some of my relatives say the stories are exaggerated." Minjung smiled sadly. "Child, the stories are not exaggerated. If anything, they do not capture the full scope of what we lost. Humans were not just advanced in their technology, they were advanced in their understanding of how civilizations should work together." She activated the classroom's simple holographic display, showing images from the human era. Great space stations where dozens of species worked side by side. Peaceful negotiations that resolved conflicts without violence. Scientific discoveries that benefited everyone instead of just the species that made them. Humans had evolved something that the rest of us lacked, Minjung continued. They called it empathy, but it was much more than emotion. It was a biological system that allowed them to understand other species so completely that they could predict our needs, our fears, and our mistakes before we recognized them ourselves. Another student, a young Altarian, asked, "Why did the council reject them if they were so helpful?" "Because we were afraid," Minjung replied honestly. "We saw their emotional responses and assumed they were weak. We saw their willingness to help and assumed they needed something from us. We could not imagine a species that would share knowledge freely without expecting control in return." She paused, looking out the window at the modest city that surrounded the university. "We thought strength meant dominance. We thought intelligence meant superiority. Humans showed us that true strength lies in knowing when to step back, and true intelligence lies in teaching others rather than controlling them." On other worlds, similar lessons were being taught. The reformed Galactic Assembly had replaced the old council, but it was a much humbler organization. Instead of demanding tribute and submission, It focused on mutual aid and cooperative problem-solving. Engineer Jun-ho worked at one of the assembly's deep space monitoring stations, watching for signs of human activity in the void between galaxies. His equipment was primitive compared to the sensors that had existed during the human era, but it was sufficient for its purpose. Contact bearing 127 Mark 85, he reported to his supervisor. Energy signatures consistent with human technology. These detections had become more common in recent years. Long-range sensors occasionally picked up impossible energy readings moving through the emptiness beyond the galaxy. The signatures matched theoretical calculations of advanced human technology, but the distances involved made direct contact impossible. "They are building something out there," Jun-ho said to his colleague, Dr. Kyung-mi. "Something that operates on principles we still do not understand." The detection suggested that humanity had not simply fled into exile. They were constructing something vast in the darkness between galaxies, using technology that made their previous achievements look primitive by comparison. "Do you think they will ever come back?" Kyung-mi asked. Jun-ho studied the sensor readings thoughtfully. "I think they never really left. They are still watching us, still hoping that we will prove worthy of their friendship." Evidence of human monitoring had been building for years. Disasters that should have destroyed entire colonies were mysteriously averted at the last moment. Pirates who attacked civilian ships found their weapons mysteriously malfunctioning. Plague outbreaks ended, suddenly with the anonymous delivery of precisely the right medical supplies. The interventions were always subtle, always deniable. But the pattern was clear to anyone who looked carefully. Humans were still protecting the galaxy's surviving species, even after everything that had happened. In the capital city of the Reformed Assembly, young Ambassador Sai-woo prepared for the most important speech of his career. The Assembly had voted to send humanity an official message of apology and invitation to return. The message would be broadcast from the communications beacon that humans had hidden in deep space decades earlier. Siwoo had spent months crafting the message, working with scholars and diplomats from across the surviving species. Every word had been chosen carefully, with full awareness that this might be their only chance to repair the relationship they had destroyed. "Citizens of the galaxy," he began, speaking into the recording devices that would carry his words across the void. "We address this message to our human friends wherever you may be." He paused, thinking of all the species that were no longer alive to hear this message. Entire civilizations had fallen during the collapse, victims of their own arrogance and dependence. "We owe you an apology that is 50 years overdue. When you offered partnership, we demanded subservience. When you shared knowledge, we stole credit. When you tried to teach us wisdom, we dismissed you as primitive. We were wrong about everything." The recording continued for an hour, outlining the lessons that galactic civilization had learned through suffering. The survivors had discovered the value of cooperation over competition, of humility over arrogance, of building together rather than tearing apart. "We understand now that you were not lucky or primitive," Siwoo concluded. "You were advanced beyond our comprehension, choosing restraint over dominance and compassion over conquest. You tried to guide us toward becoming the civilization you knew we could be. We failed you, and in failing you, we failed ourselves." The message was transmitted to the beacon coordinates that humanity had provided in their quantum message. For weeks, there was no response. Many people assumed that humans had moved too far away to receive the signal, or that they had chosen to ignore it entirely. But then, on a quiet morning in the Outer Rim territories, every deep space monitoring station in the galaxy detected the same signal simultaneously. The response was simple, broadcast on all frequencies in the common galactic language. Message received. Evaluation in progress. Please continue demonstration of cooperative development. We are watching with interest. The message was signed with coordinates that led to a small asteroid in an unremarkable system near the galactic edge. When exploration teams reached the location, they found a memorial that took their breath away. The memorial was carved from a single piece of crystalline rock, its surface inscribed with the names of every species that had existed in the galaxy during the human era. But it was not just a list of names. It was a detailed record of each species' achievements, their cultural contributions, and their potential for future growth. At the center of the memorial, a simple message was engraved, in flowing script. To our friends among the stars, we did not leave in anger. We left in hope. We hope that someday you will choose cooperation over conquest, wisdom over arrogance, and friendship over fear. Until that day comes, we will wait. Below the main message, smaller text provided instructions for accessing a vast archive of human knowledge. But the archive could only be opened by representatives from at least 100 different species working together, ensuring that no single faction could claim exclusive access to human wisdom. Dr. Min Jung was among the scholars selected to help unlock the archive. As she worked alongside scientists, philosophers, and diplomats from across the galaxy, she realized that this was exactly what humans had hoped would happen. "They are teaching us even now," she said to her colleagues as they struggled to solve the complex puzzles that guarded the archive. "This is not just a test of our technical abilities. It is a lesson in cooperation." The work took years, requiring unprecedented collaboration between species that had barely spoken to each other since the collapse. But slowly, steadily, the archive began to reveal its secrets. The human knowledge it contained was breathtaking in its scope and generosity. Medical techniques that could extend life and cure diseases. Engineering principles that could build cities among the stars. Agricultural methods that could feed billions without harming their environments. Diplomatic frameworks that could resolve conflicts peacefully. But more than just technical knowledge, the archive contained wisdom about how to use such power responsibly. Humans had learned from their own mistakes and the mistakes of countless other species they had encountered. They offered not just the tools to build a better civilization, but the guidance to use those tools wisely. The final section of the archive contained a personal message from the Human Leadership Council. "We never wanted to be your rulers or your servants. We wanted to be your friends. We still do.